Hey guys, my name is Tristan Hardinger, and I'm going to be going over a couple of literary terms here in this video. So, the three that I will be doing in this video are satire, metaphor, and allusion. So, the first term is going to be satire. So, what exactly is satire? Satire is the use of humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule to expose and criticize people's stupidity or vices, particularly in the context of contemporary politics and other topical issues. What the heck does that even mean? Oh, I'm so glad you guys asked. So, The Onion is a great example of satire. I personally love The Onion. I think they have great articles and they're funny. They're always, politically current and yeah. All right, so let's take a look at one of their articles. So, here's some examples of satire. So, right off the bat, you can see from the title, it says CIA realizes it's been using black highlighters all these years. Now, let's analyze that. So, would the CIA would they suddenly realize like, oh, we've been using black highlighters all these years? No, of course not. It's meant for comedic effect. Because the CIA is notorious for blacking out their documents and yada yada yada. So after they introduced the CIA director Porter Gross, this is where, or the satire is, just from the start, but they also, this is where they get really in depth with it. So he goes like, oh, why did this go on for so long and this far? To Gross in a press conference called shortly after the report's release. I'm as frustrated as anyone. You can't read a single thing that's been highlighted. Okay, so right there, obviously it hasn't been, like, in real life it wouldn't be highlighted, but, the whole satire of this passage is that they're not highlighting things, they're just blacking it out, but it's been an accident, they're like, oh, we've just been trying to highlight everything that's really important. Like right later, he says Goss adds, there was probably some really really important information in these documents. And then when asked by a reporter if the black ink was meant to intentionally obscure, Goss countered, "Good God, why?" Goss laminated the fact that the public will probably never know the particulars of such historic events such as the Cold War, the Civil Rights Movement, or the growth of the international drug trade. So all this is satire because it's poking fun at the CIA. How they yeah. Yeah. So I apologize for having this article on multiple slides. It's just really long. If I just scratch it down into one page, it's not going to fit. Yeah, so on the top it says like, oh, I'm sure the CIA played major roles in all these things. Goss said, but now we'll never know for sure. That's obviously satire because the CIA obviously played major roles in these things, but then he says, but now we'll never know for sure. Then he goes down and talks about like the Bay of Pigs, and after the declassified documents proved nearly impossible to read. Oh, then it says, it is unclear exactly why the CIA bureaucrats sometimes chose to emphasize entire documents. Perhaps the documents were extremely important in every detail, or the agents, not unlike college freshmen, were overwhelmed by reading the material and got a little carried away. So, all right, now that concludes this one example of satire. So let's move on. All right, open this link and read over it. Okay, so how to spot satire in this passage. So there's a couple things you can look at, which I will explain in the next slide. Alright, so here's a couple things to look at when reading this passage. So, one major thing to do if you think it's satire, you can read the introduction. It says, an English satirist, Joseph Addison, so that automatically tells you that he's famous for writing satire, and this passage is most likely about satire. A major thing, you can see right off the back is like the inconsistency in his schedule. Like he'll be like Tuesday, rose as usual at like 9 o'clock, and then it might be later it might be like, oh, like on a Thursday, oh, woke up as usual at 11 o'clock. Or, went to my normal afternoon coffee at 2 o'clock, and then it'll be like, skip my, normal, I don't know. But, yeah. Language, like, he talks about the Grand Vizier. Yeah, I just said it right, yeah. So, yeah, Grand Vizier. I'll be like, oh, Grand Vizier is dead after, I don't know. Yeah, so just... Alright, guys, so the next literary term we're going to discuss is the metaphor. But what is a metaphor? So a metaphor is a figure of speech in which a word or a phrase is applied to an object or action to which it is not literally applicable. So an example of that, would be, I had fallen through a trapdoor of depression, said Mark, who was fond of theatrical metaphors. But obviously depression is not a tangible physical object like a trapdoor, but it's more of like the meaning it implies. So a trapdoor of depression. So you guys obviously know what a trapdoor is, correct? Seeing as you can't answer me, I'm gonna assume that you do. So the trapdoor being kind of like a one-way trip is like I had fallen through a trapdoor of depression means like he's fallen into a deep depression, but through which he cannot escape. I don't know. Get it? Yeah. So here's an example of a metaphor in AP style literature. The mother woman seemed to prevail that summer at Grand Isle. It was easy to know them, fluttering about with extended protecting wings when any harm, real or imaginary, threatened their precious brood. They were women who idolized their children, worshipped their husbands, and esteemed it a holy privilege to efface themselves as individuals and grow wings as ministering angels. Okay, so one metaphor in the first example is the metaphor of angels and holiness and wings. You see, worshiping and like words. Like one way to look for metaphors is just obviously words that are similar. Words that kind of jump out and say, okay, well, this is kind of I'm noticing a pattern here. So holy, worship, wings, angels. Those are four words that all have one common thread in common. So yeah, that's one metaphor. So as for the second one, all right, here we go. Let me tell you something. A man ain't a goddamn axe. Chopping, hacking, busting every goddamn minute of the day. Things get to him. Things he can't chop down because they're inside. Okay, so like obviously the second example revolves around like the axe is a symbol, but as a metaphor, it's also a pretty good one. So it progresses from the first two lines of as from a symbol to the metaphors. Like then when Morrison says things he can't chop down because they're inside, he's using the axe to saying like, oh, I can't use this tool that I've been using to destroy tangible things in my environment. So yeah, those are two great examples of metaphors. All right, guys, time for illusions. And no, not like magic. Those are illusions. These are illusions. You feel me? But what exactly is an illusion? An illusion is a figure of speech that makes a reference to a place, person, or something that happened. This can be real or imaginary and may refer to anything, including paintings, opera, folklore, mythical creatures, or religious manuscripts. The reference can be direct or may be inferred and can broaden the reader's understanding. Alright, so basically what's that saying if you suck at reading interpretation? Is that like it's just it'll refer to something and it can be subtle or no, and that's the point that the author is trying to make. So okay. So why are illusions important in literature? So there's 2 points I found. So illusions engage the reader and will often help the reader remember the message or theme of the passage, and illusions allow the writer to give an example or get a point across without going into a lengthy discourse. Illusions are great for the first point. They often help remind the reader of the theme of the passage. Like for instance, in Song of Solomon, they keep alluding back to the Bible. Like a lot of biblical allusions are major ones, and Pilate and Solomon, and like the Bible pages and Pilate's ear and her box. It's just like just things that create like either deeper understanding or yeah. So some examples of illusions. I thought the software would be useful, but it was a Trojan horse. So those of you that don't know what the Trojan horse is, it was this horse built by the Greeks, and it was like they say this giant horse, and all the Greek soldiers hid inside. And there was a gift to the enemy, and then the enemy brought it into their city, and then like in the middle of the night the soldiers emerged, and by using trickery the Greeks won the war. So like the software would be they thought that the software would be useful, but it was a Trojan horse. It was disguised as useful, but it really wasn't. So next he was a real Romeo with the ladies. Now, I'm sure all of you are, very familiar with Romeo, or at least you've heard of him, but he was this dude who kind of had this relationship with, like, this 13-year-old girl, I think, and then killed, like, 6 people. I don't know. But, kind of romantic dude, I guess. So, yeah. Alright, then last one was chocolate was her Achilles heel. If you don't know what the reference is, basically there was, means her weakness is chocolate. Achilles was a character in Greek mythology who was basically invincible. As a child, his mother dipped him in magic water but then she held him by the heel, so the magic protected him all over except for his heel. That's where the mother was holding him. So I guess that's your weakness. That's chocolate was her weakness. http://www.com/articles CIA realizes it's been using black colors at all, 1848/http://wvalley12.org/education/page/download php ?file info equals QWRKAXNVBL9WCM9ZZV9WY XNZYWDLDIL IBERJ06O I93D3C2LN3JA G9VBHMLVAM3YMX 1ZXZHBGXLES9PABW FNZXWVZG9JBWDLLZ U5MDJMAWXIMTQ2NZE5LNBKZG %3D http://www.vocabulary.com/list/31136 #view equals notes http://examples.yourdictionary.com/examples/examples of illusions.html. Okay.